What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the RTB Eagles Show here on the Ring the Bell Philly Network, presented by SeatGeek. This is the first episode. I mean, we are formally gangrene, but I'm making everything as uniform as possible. So this is the RTB Eagles Show. We have brand new, as you can tell, logos and branding. So this is what it's going to be from here on out. Thank you to Nick Camia or at Extra Cooler on all the socials for again just coming up with just a bang out brand and logo for our network here. He's done so much for us. He did our flyers branding, our hot tag branding, and then now all of this. So he's just spectacular. So if you guys need anything for your podcast or your business, at Extra Cooler on Instagram and Twitter, head over to him and talk to Nick and let him know that Chris sent you over. But yeah, we're just here. We're going to talk a little bit about the Eagles Ravens week 2. I'm sorry, Eagles Patriots. I have to change that. I don't even know why. I think I had Patriots on or Ravens on the brain for some reason. But Eagles Patriots week 2 of the Eagles preseason. Again, 90% of the starters did not play. But look, there are still some things that need to be talked about. Joining me on this show is someone who maybe will be here throughout the season if it's something that we can figure out schedule-wise, because we're going to be doing, multiple Eagles shows per week, starting probably after next week, because once you get past week 3, it's time to cut the roster down to the 53-man, and then it's time to get to week 1 of the regular season and onward. So joining me is another D. Francesco. He's my brother, Brad. Brad, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Thank you for joining us on this short notice. John was unavailable to watch the game. I forget what wacky excuse he gave me, but nonetheless, John will mostly be here throughout the season. No problems there. So yeah, a thrilling preseason game, Brad, for the Eagles that saw them, come back late in the game, take the lead, win 14-13. I'll tell you what, the big thing that I got out of this game, and you and I talked very briefly about this right before we hit record here. Tanner McKee is significantly better than Kenny Pickett at playing quarterback. What were your thoughts when you saw Kenny Pickett compared to McKee?
Kenny Pickett, I felt like he was getting stuck in the pocket a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he tried to get out, he's not really that mobile enough. Yeah, enough to get out where he needs to go.
Yeah, and go ahead.
I said, like, McKee was able to do most of that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, realistically, to put it bluntly, Kenny Pickett was awful, and I thought McKee was really good. And it's almost got to a point where Dave Spadaro, the guy, the main Eagles insider, for the past 2 decades, had to basically make a statement after the game that Nick Sirianni is very happy with Kenny Pickett. He's the number 2. He's the backup quarterback to Jalen Hurts. Now, I'll tell you, man, I didn't think Pickett was bad against Baltimore. He wasn't great, but
definitely had a better game.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I mean, he was running a really, I guess the lack of a better term, a vanilla offense. He had backup wide receivers, backup offensive line, and he wasn't that bad. I actually thought Pickett against Baltimore looked pretty good for a backup quarterback in a backup, second string, third string situation. And I thought, okay, well, I mean, he might, take that game to the next level against a horrible New England Patriots team. Well, that was not the case. He looked completely lost, like you said. At one point, he took 4 sacks and 8 dropbacks.
Yeah, he couldn't get out of the pocket.
I have no idea how that's even possible. that in 8 snaps, you find a way to get sacked 4 times. Just throw the ball away.
I was like Cam Newton in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, just throw the ball. I mean, just throw the ball away. He completed 11 or 13 passes, but only for 67 yards, only netted 43 yards. 19 of those yards came on a short pass at Will Shipley, who I really like, Brad. He's had a real impressive training camp and 2 preseason games so far. Turned that short pass into a very long gain. I just thought
out of Clemson.
Yeah, for sure. 3.3 yards per attempt for Pickett is just awfully unacceptable. I never even thought of the name Tanner McKee going into training camp as being anything viable than just like a practice squad quarterback. But I mean, let's kind of, call a spade here, Brad. Tanner McKee has completely outplayed Kenny Pickett to be the number 2 quarterback, but we probably know it's not going to be that way.
No, not even in a quarter and a half, he outplayed him.
Yeah, for sure. I thought McKee looked really good. He came in to start the third quarter and immediately threw like darts. I think it was like a 15-yarder to EJ Jenkins and then another 10-yarder to Joseph Nagata.
He had a big game.
Yeah, very much so. Another guy making a name for himself. Just those 2 throws were better than anything I've seen out of Kenny Pickett in the entire preseason. He's got this. I think, McKee also seems to really have this offense mastered. He's confident. He seems very decisive. He was 8 of 9 for 68 yards. Would have been 9 for 9. But Jacob Harris, I think, dropped that ball in the third quarter. But overall, I really liked McKee and what he brings to this team. The offense looked much more efficient, more dynamic. Maybe McKee doesn't have a legitimate shot at being a backup quarterback, the number 2 guy in Philly right now. Kenny Pickett, look, the Eagles gave up draft capital to get Kenny Pickett in here. So I just don't think there's a shot for McKee to be named the backup. I mean, so much so that Eagles PR were rushing after the game to make sure that we all thought, or we were all told that Sirianni is very happy with Kenny Pickett. I just think that's just, hearsay and,
they have to say that.
They have to say that kind of stuff. Yeah. But nonetheless, moving on to talk about this game, a couple players that I really, really liked. We mentioned one in Will Shipley, but I do want to talk about Nakobe Dean.
Yeah.
This dude, man, he can just play.
I didn't think he was going to play a lot either.
I know. He played a lot last night, and he was all over the field, man. He made a bunch of plays as a blitzer. How great is it, Sean? How great is it, Brad, to hear the word blitzing and part of the Eagles defense? It's such a wild concept. Thank you, Vic Fangio, for coming in here and actually remembering that, there can be blitz packages and defenses. He was also very good, I thought, in coverage in the open field. As the preseason's gone on now through 2 games, I feel like Nakobe Dean's gotten better and better. What are your thoughts on Dean?
I feel like from last year, he had like a little bit of a down year. Not down year, but it was like wasn't as straightforward as you would want.
And then he got hurt.
And he got hurt, so you didn't really get to see his full thing. But hopefully this year, judging from last night, he'll be fine.
For sure. Yeah. And, I still think obviously Devin White will be one of the starters for the Eagles. And, we've heard the coaches really like Zach Braun, but it was basically said on Friday that Nakobe Dean won that job. I don't know if that's to light a fire under the ass of Zach Braun, but I mean, Nakobe Dean pretty much played his way into a starting job for this team, which, listen, this is what he was drafted for. Nakobe Dean was a very highly touted linebacker coming out of college last year. He had the unfortunate injury, and he just came out he looked a little sluggish from all reports in the very beginning of training camp. But man, He has really obviously played himself into the favor of Vic Fangio and his defense. So it's awesome to see Nakobe Dean in there because I really like what he brings. I think he's really good in the blitz packages, and I trust him when he backs up into coverage in the open field because he's all over the place.
Yeah, he doesn't stop.
No. And the other guy, we kind of briefly talked about him. He made Kenny Pickett look good for one play. Will Shipley, dude, he's fun to watch. What have you seen out of Will?
Well, from the Ravens game, he did punt returns, I think, or kick returns on the Ravens game, and he has speed, dude.
Yeah.
And it looks like he doesn't really drop anything. He looks good.
He's powerful. He's
small, too. He's not even that big.
I know. He's a rookie 4th-round draft pick, and the dude on that 19-yard catch, it was a 2nd and 22, because Kenny Pickett sucks. And he could have been tackled like 3 or 4 times. But man, he was able to get out of, most of them to gain that significant of yardage. We haven't really seen Shipley produce in the running game, but he's going to have a role in this offense,
especially. And this is especially if who I'm about to bring up doesn't come out as good as we think, as we want him to, Gainwell.
Yeah, this is a big season for Gainwell
because he couldn't hold the ball last year. Too many fumbles, and I feel like if he does the same things he did last year, Shipley might be able to take his spot.
I agree. So it's going to be interesting to see. I'm assuming Shipley's going to probably see significant time in the final preseason game as well. Moving on to another player that I really liked, had a huge interception. It was great to see him back in the mix. Was Avonte Maddox. He made that big play in the end zone on that Patriots second drive and picked off a Jacoby Brissett pass for 47 yards. I'll say this, man. He's obviously a player. He's one of those dudes, Brad, who when you look at him, he's got that unfortunate tagline next to him of, Avonte Maddox is a really good player if he can stay healthy. And that's it's just a buzzkill of a connection for a player. But every time I feel like Avonte Maddox can be and you could, tell me your opinion too. Avonte Maddox in short spurts or, half the snaps that he would normally play as a starter when healthy. I think Avonte Maddox as a guy with less snaps can be very effective on the football field and could also, not a guarantee, but significantly reduce his chances of getting hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you can get him on the field, like you said, for less drives and less plays, and like he's gonna come through, I feel like, or can come through on the time that he's on the field, just try to get him not to get injured.
Yeah, for sure. He's really good. Like, I think he's got a good, I think it's called slot safety. He's got really good versatility for that position. It makes him really valuable. But again, like I said, everything about Avonte Maddox is predicated on just can the dude just stay on the football field? Because again, it's an age-old thing. The adage is your best ability is availability. And I feel like that's what Avonte Maddox can bring because he's a playmaker when he's healthy. Definitely. It's a very crowded defensive back room with a ton of talent. But, Maddox, who's already released once during the offseason and then re-signed, has really made himself very valuable in multiple spots. He's very versatile, clearly. But plays like that interception, Brad, are huge when it comes to, that final 53 roster decision. Do you think Avonte Maddox finds a way to stay on this roster?
He definitely does, because he's also not just take away the injury prone. He's an energy guy. He's he's not young but not old, so people look at him coming in as a leader. He's been on the team for a while, and
he's got a lot of big friendships on this team. Like his best friends, Dallas Goedert. So yeah, they're really good friends.
That's a good thing about the team, though. They're close.
Yeah.
Like they're just.
Mm-hmm. The negative I do want to say, is I do not think the future is bright in Philly for James Bradberry. I don't.
Yeah, dude, you saw what happened?
Yeah, he looked awful
He's
Thursday
trying to
night.
he's trying to dive at people, and he's
Yeah,
coming.
because he was out of position almost every play that was towards him. He couldn't tackle, and you could clearly see, Brad, that his speed is very lacking big time. And I assume at this point Roseman, Howie the King, is probably about ready to give up on the idea that he might be able to get a draft pick for the now 31-year-old Bradberry, who was a second team All Pro 2 years ago. So he has fallen off the cliff rather quickly here. I don't know about you, maybe because he's a veteran, he might make the team, but I just don't think it's going to happen. What do you think? Do you keep him or no?
Me personally, I wouldn't keep him, but I feel like they're going to give him the benefit of the doubt to try to come back from what happened last year.
I guess
I wouldn't, but I just feel like they're going to give him a shot.
No, I agree. You're right.
Because like you have Kelly Ringo, who can, you know what I mean? So take his spot. You have Eli Ricks, who can. They came last year, but Ringo looks good this year, and from the snaps that Ringo had last year, he was good. So you have people that you have depth. Like you have people who can come up for him.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. The last guy I want to bring up who I really liked, especially there was kind of criticism internally, and you could hear certain things about what maybe Fangio wasn't super happy with one of the big offseason signings in Bryce Huff. Huff played very well in the first 2 series. He had 4 tackles in the first 2 series. He was everywhere. He was from a lateral movement. He looked dominant in that first drive and a half or so. Very, very uplifting and exciting to see Bryce Huff look as good as he did. Do you expect? Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, you're good.
I said he was. I was going to say that he was reading plays like it was nothing.
Yep. What's good? So I'm assuming we're gonna probably see a lot of Bryce Huff. I'm guessing we're gonna see a lot of Bryce Huff next week in that final preseason game, because I think they're just trying to get him acclimated with that Fangio defense. Because look, like it or not, the guy was paid a pretty penny to be here. So the Eagles are going to rely on him even if he doesn't play every snap. I mean, the dude's capable of getting, 8 to 12 sacks. So he's going to be somebody you're going to rely on, especially after paying him what you did. What are your expectations of Bryce Huff in that final week of the preseason?
I'm going to say at least 4 tackles and a sack.
I would love to see a Bryce Huff sack.
I think he'll get a sack. You have him for 3 years. So,
yeah.
I just feel like if you can get, like, you're going to get a lot out of him, but I feel like for the next game, I at least want, even if it's less tackles, but I want to see a sack from Bryce Huff.
No, I think from a defensive standpoint, I think everyone's going to be looking for a Bryce Huff sack. So we'll see what happens with that. Other than that, we assume that we're not going to see Saquon, Jalen, AJ, Devontae. We're just not going to. I mean, look, again, I saw it on X or on Twitter last night, people talking about the Eagles babying Jalen Hurts. Just an FYI to everybody in the current NFL, most starting quarterbacks do not play in the preseason.
Lamar hasn't touched the ball.
Right, at all. And
Mahomes hasn't touched nothing.
No. And guys like Saquon Barkley and AJ Brown and Devontae, they shouldn't see the field. That's what you have those joint practices for. And when they had that joint practice, all we saw were great videos of how AJ Brown and Devontae were dominating the field.
And no one was touching Devontae.
Exactly. They're just special. So I think fans, look, I'm not one to just say relax, but relax. They're going to be ready to play week 1. These dudes are mutants, and I'm really excited to see Jalen Hurts this year. I know I forget what his odds are for the MVP. I think like a plus 1,600, so that's a good bet. And I do know for Offensive Player of the Year right now, Saquon Barkley's a plus 2,000. That's a good bet that a lot of Eagles fans should take. Yep, next week will be the final preseason game for the Eagles. I'm trying to remember what time. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Next Saturday will be the game at home against the Minnesota Vikings. Next Saturday, 1:00. Odd, but then you got 2 weeks, and then Friday, September 6th, is the opener all the way down south in Brazil against the Green Bay Packers. But look, like we said, like Brad said, and I agree with him, I think the one thing I'm looking forward to in the third preseason final one is a sack out of Bryce Huff. And I would like to see something a little better out of Kenny Pickett. It would be nice to see Kenny Pickett maybe have a really good bounce back game because he's going to get plenty of time to play next Saturday.
I want to see Gainwell do something so bad.
Yeah, I agree
him.
with you. Yeah. All right, so this has been the Eagles Patriots. I don't want to say instant reaction, but this is our thoughts on week 2 of the preseason and that 14-13 win against the Patriots. We will be back here next week following the third and final preseason game. And then moving forward, I'm not going to give out the schedule now because we have to hammer it out. John and I really have to talk about that in terms of how we're going to do these shows prior to week 1, because it's going to be, 2 shows a week, maybe more depending on what's going on. But we're very much looking forward to bringing you just like constant content here, covering the Philadelphia Eagles throughout the season. Everything with the Phillies on this network will not change. I got a lot of questions like, okay, well, what's going to happen with the Phillies? It's not going to change. Everything's the same. It's a weekly show recapping. Once the postseason starts, after each postseason game, we're going to have a post-game show. It's just nothing's changing. It's just that the central focus of this network, we are moving towards Philadelphia Eagles football. That's the moneymaker in this town. That's what everybody cares about. It's just the way it is. I don't care what anybody says. It'll always be a football town. Philadelphia will always be Eagles forever. So yeah, Brad, thank you so much for this spot start here. Really appreciate you hopping on and helping me out. Thank you to everybody who's watching. If you are watching us live on YouTube or if you catch this afterwards, like, subscribe to the channel, and of course, ring that bell for show notifications when we're going live or when we drop a show at all. So again, appreciate it. Head over to SeatGeek.com right now. Use our code RINGTHEBELL for $20 off your very first ticket purchase. All right, so for Brad, I'm Christy Francesco. This has been the Ring the Bell Eagle Show, and we'll catch you guys down the road. Have a good one, everybody, and take care. Go Birds.